Hello, my name is Philip Bryan Hall, and today I'd like to resume for a moment my former occupation as a teacher of economics and try and dispel some of the misconceptions that seem to have grown up in the recent past about tariffs. Now, I'm sorry, but tariffs don't make you rich, no matter what anybody says. And therefore, I'm struggling to understand the enthusiasm in the Trump administration for the introduction of tariffs. Tariffs are essentially a sales tax. It so happens that these sales taxes apply only to goods supplied to the US by other countries. But that does not alter their fundamental nature. A sales tax is always a sales tax. European VAT, or value-added tax to give it its full name, which President Trump so dislikes, is also a sales tax, but that applies to all purchases in a country, not just imports. And so, unless a specific product also incurs excise duty on top of VAT, this type of tax doesn't distinguish between foreign and domestic produce, whereas tariffs do. When you apply a sales tax to any product, its price rises. It may be that the supplier is able to absorb a proportion of the new tax by reducing his profit margin, thus avoiding the need to pass the whole tax on to the consumer. But it will be a rarity for the price to the consumer not to rise at all. If the consumer goes on buying a product that has been subjected to a sales tax, then the consumer will spend more on that product. In other words, price rises resulting from tariffs are paid by those domestic residents who continue to import foreign goods. It follows that these continuing consumers must divert a certain portion of their spending that would have gone on other products to pay the higher price of the imported product. If that alternative expenditure would have been on domestic products, then the expenditure of those consumers on domestic products will fall, and the income of those who produce those domestic products will necessarily also fall. Of course, some consumers will be deterred by the higher price from purchasing the imported good at all. The volume of imports will probably fall. This means the foreign suppliers of imported goods will have less income with which to purchase US goods, and American exports will accordingly fall, along with the income of American workers who produce those exports. There remains a question of whether domestic production will rise to replace the reduced imports. Domestic production that was able to compete at the previous import price would presumably already be doing so. Domestic production that is now able to compete at the new import price, but was not able to compete at the old import price, will probably avail itself of the diverted demand, but by definition only at a price that is higher than the old import price. So again, it is the consumer who pays, only he pays extra to a domestic producer rather than paying a tax to his government. The other way that domestic production may rise is if businesses are inspired to invest in new production facilities in order to supply import substitutes to the domestic market. Most businesses appraise investments on the basis of discounted cash flow. That is, they anticipate future returns and allow for the fact that those returns occur not now, but at a future date, and they compare those returns with the immediate cost of the investment at today's prices. They know it will take some time to construct new production capacity, and they also know that a more enlightened future American administration will be likely to reverse the tariff policy of this administration. For most modern capital investments, the initial outlay will be probably too great and the time horizon too close for such import substitute investments to be worthwhile. In short, it has long been an accepted economic principle that more trade is generally good, in the sense of raising incomes all round, and less trade is bad. Reduction of tariffs increases trade, imposing tariffs reduces it. Trade wars, therefore, will generally impoverish everybody in the world by the time secondary consequences have had time to filter through the system. Protectionism may occasionally be justified. For example, when a foreign country's government is breaking World Trade Organization rules by unfairly subsidizing its exports with a view to ruining foreign competitors. This is a practice known as dumping. However, if the foreign country simply happens to be better at producing a particular product than you are, it makes sense to divert those domestic resources, which are currently deployed to producing something inefficiently, and switch them into producing something else efficiently. Just protecting old-fashioned industries that have lost the comparative advantage they historically enjoyed turns your economy into a museum. It's not a source of economic growth or future wealth. Modernizing, on the other hand, means trade can continue to increase so that everybody can benefit. I acknowledge that the outline I've just given may be seen as very basic economics by those who know something about the subject. I also acknowledge that in this brief outline I have glossed over inevitable problems of modernization and transition. However, the basic explanation I have given was inspired by an interview in the US in which a member of the public firmly inserted that tariffs on Chinese goods would be paid by the Chinese government. I could hardly believe that anyone these days could be so ill-informed. But since then, I have heard Donald Trump himself assert that money would be flowing into the USA so fast as a result of the new tariffs that Americans wouldn't know how to spend it all. Oh dear. Perhaps the only thing stopping pigs flying in the USA is that porcine aviation is prohibited by US law. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.